Hi, Rich Roberge from New York in Puerto Rico, guitar player, multi-instrumentalist, composer, new to home recording studios. And for this week's assignment, I'm going to configure an EQ plugin to set it up like a large format mixing console in Reaper, which is my DAW, using the ReaEQ plugin. We're already in Reaper, and on the left-hand side, we have the diagram of the example that we'll be using to set up our plugin. And let's open our plugin. We can click on the FX button next to our sample audio track or at the top of our vertical strip. And then I select from this list ReaEQ, and I'm going to remove it from this effects chain window. We're only going to use one plugin. We don't need to have a chain. So I want to point out that we have a checkbox here to enable and disable applying this to our track, and that we have multiple tabs. Each tab represents one of our filters. And let's begin by following the same sequence from the video lectures. From the top, we have a 75 Hertz high pass frequency filter set at 18 dB per octave slope. And what a high frequency filter does is that anything below that is going to get cut off. So this gives us the option when we set it at 75 Hertz to eliminate rumble and low frequency noise. We come to our tab here and we select high pass filter, and we have the option of setting our 75 threshold through the slider or by typing in the frequency 75 Hertz, and that sets up the threshold. As far as our slope goes, we don't have the option of setting it to an 18 dB octave here, 18 dB per octave here, I'm sorry. In this plugin, it goes with a setting of a bandwidth. I did some tests and figured out that a setting of 2 is pretty much equivalent to 6 dBs. So I do have a workaround where we can set 3 high-pass filters in series set at 75 Hertz each of them, and with a 2 bandwidth per octave, and that would give us our 18 dB, but we do not have the time to do that within this presentation. So let's move on to our next filter, and we start from the bottom up now. Our next filter is our low shelf filter, which is fixed at 80 Hertz. So we click on our second tab here, and from our pull-down menu, we select low shelf, and we manually enter 80 Hertz here. And we could have used a slider, but for purpose of the time we have here, we entered it manually, and we're going to set this at a -6. Notice that we can go all the way from a positive 12 to a very high negative. We can't go to a positive 15, but that's more than enough. And what we're going to do here is that we're going to set this for our example at -6. And we're going to move on to the next set of filters. We have our low mid filter, and it goes from 100 Hertz to 2 kilohertz or 2000 Hertz with a default of 400 Hertz. And we're going to select the next tab here, and we're going to select band. I realize that in the video lectures they use the bell type filter. We do not have that option here, even though this works pretty much the same way. So we're going to set this at a 400 Hertz default, 400. And for purpose of our example, we're going to set this to a -10. Again, it has the same range as in the previous filter, from a positive 10 to a very large infinite, actually negative infinite. And we set it to a -10, and we move on to our next filter, which is our high mids. Our high mids start at 400 Hertz, and they have a threshold of 2 kilohertz. They go all the way to 8 kilohertz. So we're going to select our next tab. We're also going to select a band filter for that, and we're going to set it at 2 kilohertz or 2000 Hertz. And for this one, we're going to select the gain at a positive 8. We want to emphasize that range of our high mids, and for this example. And we move on to our next and final filter, which is our high shelf filter, which in our example is set at 12 kilohertz. And we're going to add a tab here, and it added this tab, and we select high shelf, and we're going to set this at 12,000. And this one we're going to leave at 0 right now, default, and in terms of gain. And what we're going to do now is hear how this sampled audio track sounds without the filter applied. And when we apply the filter, we get those nice high mids emphasized. Notice that we have two graphs here. One represents, right, the input signal, that's the gray one, and the yellow one are filtered sounds. Before we conclude, I want to apologize for going over the time limit, but this was a very lengthy subject and I wanted to cover it in detail, and also for rushing it a little bit. Again, I want to respect your time. I want to thank you for watching and remind you that constructive criticism, feedback, suggestions are welcome. Best wishes with your own projects. Let me know what you thought about it.